from Joe Reagan's death before the show even started, to Sarah's tragic death and its consequences. Here are why some major Blue Bloods characters have been killed off. One of the first deaths in the story happens before the show kicked off. I'm talking about Joe Reagan. He was Frank and Mary's son and the third child of the Reagan family. Now, he wasn't your run-of-the-mill victim of bad luck or a pesky accident. He met his demise while being all sneaky and undercover with the FBI. You see, he was sniffing around this secret society called the Blue Templar, and those guys didn't take too kindly to his nosy investigations. In fact, they thought, hey, why don't we murder this Joe dude for poking his nose where it doesn't belong? And that's exactly what they did. It was a rude awakening. The thing is, even though Joe was pushing up daisies long before the show started, he still managed to strike a chord with fans. Must be some kind of supernatural fandom connection going on there. Who knows? The police department still decided to show some love to Joe, even from beyond the grave. They posthumously promoted him from detective, giving him the recognition he deserved. But this wasn't the end of this story because it all led us to Sonny Malevsky, the big bad boss of the Blue Templar. This guy was as shady as they come, and he met his demise in quite a dramatic fashion as he took his own life with a service pistol. Now, this whole Malevsky mess brought some closure to the death of Joe Reagan, the guy I mentioned earlier. Well, in the episode aptly titled The Blue Templar, Jamie, the Reagan family detective, starts connecting the dots and spills the beans to his family about his suspicions surrounding Joe's death and that infamous Blue Templar gang. So our Reagan clan decides to take matters into their own hands and launch their very own private investigation. You gotta love some good old-fashioned family teamwork, right? And guess what? Their digging leads them straight to the dirty cops who are running this secret club. Commissioner Reagan himself was the one who nabbed Malevsky. But before the handcuffs could even fully settle on the guy's wrists, he decided to skip the whole trial and legal process. Yup, he just went ahead and pulled the trigger. Boom. That's one way to avoid facing the consequences of your actions. Not exactly a textbook ending, but hey, it wrapped up the Malevsky chapter quite nicely. And it gave us a great shot at seeing the Reagan family magic just work. But not all deaths on the show leave us feeling better in the end. One of the most complicated deaths was that of Thomas Wilder, the serial abuser and murderer with some serious mommy issues. This guy had a real knack for ruining lives, especially those of young women between 18 and 22. So in the 6th season of Blue Bloods, Wilder decided to make a grand comeback, like some messed up version of a villainous superhero. The episode called Down the Rabbit Hole was all about this psycho's resurrection. Our dynamic duo, Danny and Baez, were on the case. They were investigating the murder of a woman when they put 2 and 2 together and realized Wilder was up to his old tricks again. So to catch the lunatic, they paid a visit to Wilder's mom. And guess what? Mama spills the beans on his twisted psyche, blaming it all on an abusive childhood. Well, thanks for the family therapy session, lady. But hey, she did give them a cell address, so that was a useful tip, I guess. Off they go to the prison to have a little heart-to-heart with Wilder himself. But oh boy, he's not one to miss an opportunity to mess with Danny's head. He drops the bombshell that he's kidnapped Nikki, Danny's niece. Seriously, who does that? But anyone who knows anything about Danny knows there was nothing to worry about because Danny is a one-man rescue mission. He tracks down Wilder and saves the day, bringing Nikki back to safety. But hey, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. In the heat of the moment, Danny had to make a tough call and shoot Wilder, who was unarmed. It was a permanent solution to a seriously messed up problem. And let's not forget the emotional toll this whole ordeal took on Danny. He had been haunted by Wilder's previous murders, thinking about all the families affected by this sicko's actions, but he had to go against his own moral code to shoot an unarmed man, no matter how terrible he might have been. It really makes you feel conflicted, and that was the writer's goal. At least Wilder won't be causing any more harm. But you can't talk about controversial deaths without at least mentioning Linda Reagan, a character whose exit from the show left fans scratching their heads and reaching for the tissues. So, Linda met her unfortunate end in a helicopter crash. But hold on, we didn't even get to see it happen on screen. Nope, they decided to keep us in the dark and let our imaginations run wild. I mean, I didn't really want to go through a heart-wrenching goodbye scene, but off-screen? Now, here's where it gets juicy. In Season 9, they dropped the bombshell that Linda's helicopter crash was no accident. Oh no, it was orchestrated by none other than the murderous cartel member, Jose Rojas. This guy not only took Linda's life, but also had just finished off Delgado's wife. Naturally, fans were left in an uproar. They were like, wait, why did Linda have to leave the show? We demand answers. The outcry was real. But there's a reason behind it all. Amy Carlson, the actress who played Linda, decided to bid farewell to Blue Bloods after 7 years. She simply didn't want to work on the show for whatever reason, and she didn't renew her contract, which expired the previous season. The writers simply decided to make the most out of a bad situation, and in the end, we got a storyline out of it. But other deaths weren't as impactful, such as the death of Javier Baez, the older brother of Maria, and a guy who had a bit of a rocky path in the Blue Bloods universe. So, Javier, he had his fair share of issues. I'm talking about being a drug addict and all that fun stuff. Not exactly the ideal candidate for a family reunion. Now, in the episode cleverly titled Bad Blood, Danny and Baez find themselves knee-deep in a murder investigation. Some poor soul gets stabbed to death in a dark alley. But this is where things get interesting, because guess who the prime suspect turns out to be? That's right, our very own Javier. Turns out he's been a bit estranged from his sister Maria. Family drama always finds a way to sneak into murder cases, doesn't it? Now, in another episode called Partners, Javier drops a bombshell. He reveals that he's been working as an informant for the DEA against a dangerous drug cartel. But alas, tragedy strikes. During a raid on that very cartel, Javier meets his untimely end while saving Maria's life. You'd think that would have some major emotional impact, right? Well, not exactly. See, Javier's character didn't get much screen time, so his death was like a blink-and-you'll-miss-it moment. In the end, Maria and Danny got recognized for their bravery with the NYPD Medal for Valor, and the entire storyline really just existed for Maria to develop more as a character. But if there was a death that did manage to bring us to tears, it was that of Maria. So in episode 17, aptly titled Two-Faced, Erin finds herself caught in a moral quandary. A young woman tragically passes away, and it turns out her dad, Dr. David Peterson, might be to blame. See, David believed his daughter Sarah was suffering from some mysterious autoimmune disorder that caused her unbearable pain. When conventional medical treatments didn't do the trick, he took matters into his own hands and tried some unorthodox method. But here's the tragedy. Those methods apparently led to Sarah's untimely death. Now, Erin has to make some tough decisions. Should she charge David with manslaughter or even murder? It's like a legal maze with no easy way out. To make matters more complicated, Sarah's mom, Elaine, is all fired up and wants to see David pay for what happened. An autopsy reveals traces of aconite, a deadly poison, in Sarah's system. Turns out, David euthanized his daughter at her request. Yeah, heavy stuff, I told you. Erin's torn. You can see it in her eyes. She's moved by David's admission and his willingness to face the consequences, but she's also wrestling with the gravity of the situation. In the end, Erin plays her legal cards and charges David with manslaughter, recommending probation instead of jail time. She forces Elaine to realize that Sarah wouldn't have wanted her father locked away forever. It was truly one of the most emotional deaths on the show, even though it was regarding a character we never even knew. So, from the tragic death of Sarah and its consequences to Joe Reagan's death before the show even started, this was why some major Blue Bloods characters have been killed off.